Welcome trainees. Today, we are going to discuss about part 2 in week number 34. In week number 34, we are going to discuss about the topics of 1. Chucks and chucking, 2. Mounting and dismounting of chuck, and last, faceplate, drilling, and boring. In part 2, we are going to see mounting and dismounting of chucks. Let's see the objectives of this topic. You shall be able to explain the method of mounting and dismounting chucks from spindle noses. Let's see the definition for mounting and dismounting of chuck. To perform lathe operations on work materials, it may not be always possible to have only one type work holding device fitted to the spindle. Hence it becomes an absolute necessity for dismounting the work holding device already assembled to the spindle and mount that work holding device which is needed for the work in hand. For an easy understanding of different spindle noses and their applications, the mounting of different work holding devices are illustrated. And next, we are going to discuss about before mounting. Before attempting to mount a chuck, ensure that it is the correct one for the lathe and for the job in hand. To prevent such damage from occurring, take the following steps. Place a wooden board on the lathe bed when mounting light chucks to prevent damage to the slideways. For large chucks, place a wooden cradle between the chucks and the lathe bed. Now, we are going to see after mounting. First, set the speed change lever to the slowest speed. Second, turn on the power to the motor. Third, switch on the motor. Fourth, engage the clutch lever. Fifth, the chuck would now begin revolving. And sixth, check that the diameter and face of the chuck are running true by observing the surfaces. Let's see the mounting of chuck with different spindle types. First one is mounting chuck on to the threaded spindle. Switch off the motor. Place the chuck on the wooden plank or cradle and slide it close to the spindle nose. Turn the spindle anticlockwise by hand and engage the chuck on the spindle threads. Set the speed change lever to the slowest speed. Screw the chuck in until it fits firmly on the spindle. Second one is mounting on tapered spindle. Switch off the motor. Hence, the chuck on the wooden board or cradle and slide it close to the spindle nose. Turn the spindle by hand until the key on the spindle nose lines up with the keyway in the chuck. Set the speed change lever to the slowest speed. Push the chuck onto the spindle and turn the locking ring anticlockwise. Third one is mounting on a camlock spindle. Switch off the motor. Place the chuck on a wooden board and slide it close to the spindle nose. Disengage the clutch to permit free rotation of the spindle. Insert the correct chuck key into a camlocking screw on the spindle. Turn each camlocking screw so that the registration line is vertical or aligns with the corresponding line on the spindle. Set the speed change lever to the slowest speed. Push the chuck onto the spindle. Tighten each camlock screw in a clockwise direction. And the last type is mounting onto a bolted spindle. Switch off the motor. Place the chuck on a wooden board, remove nuts and washers from the studs on the chuck. Disengage the clutch, to permit free rotation of the spindle. Turn the spindle, by hand, until the key, in the spindle lines, up with the slot in the chuck. Set the speed change lever, to the slowest speed. Push the chuck, onto the spindle. Fit washers, and nuts to the studs. And last, we are going to see dismounting chucks, from a threaded spindie. Switch off the motor. Set the speed change lever, to the slowest speed. Place a solid wooden block, between one of the chuck jaws, and the rear of the lathe bed. The length of the wooden block should be slightly less than the center height of the lathe. Turn the lathe spindle clockwise, by hand, to loosen the chuck, from the spindle nose. To boost your brain power, we are going to play one quiz related to this topic. The question is, what is the name of the spindle type of chuck, given below? The options are A. Threaded spindle, B. Tapered spindle, C. Camlock spindle, and D. Bolted spindle. Yes, you are right. The answer is D. Bolted spindle. With this, we are completed the topic of mounting and dismounting of chuck, in part 2, of week number 34. We are successfully completed part 1 and part 2 in week number 34. I will be back with faceplate, drilling, and boring topics in part 3 of week number 34. Thank you.